welcome back all of you for the last panel discussion. That's about fundraising versus investment challenges, startups and investors. We have on the panel Vandana Thulani, she is going to join, and Tushar Kansal. We have Spurs Kandabar and Spurs for CEO founder Style Walk, and Prabhat Kumar Tiwari is the founder CEO Your Own Room. We have Yogesh Ture, founder CEO of Thrive. We have Chinmay Mishra, founder CEO Huliv. So welcome all of you.
Thank you, Rajan.
Thank you.
Yeah. So most of them are raising fund. So I got introduction, all of you. Only Chinmay is left to be introduced. Could you talk about Chinmay, about your outfit? What exactly your business model? Just few lines before we start.
Yeah, we are in the student accommodation space and operating in the non-metros or tier 2, tier 3 cities. Currently operating about 4,000 beds across 5 cities.
Okay, that's great. So I got the introduction of you all. So I think all of you, most of you are raising a different stage of fund, different level of raising fund. I want to know over the last 12 months, did you attempt to raise fund? Brief the challenges you have faced. Anyone who has attempted to raise fund.
Yeah, so we raised some funds in the last 6 months. So I think we started the roundup in July or August. So we were actually doing the round in April. That's where we were starting in, but then COVID happened. So we took a break up for 2 quarters, and then we started up in July, August when the market was opening up. So yeah, it was a little tough at that time because the entire discussion what we are having today about co-working and the positive sentiment about office space and co-working and flex space. This was not the situation 5 months back, right? 5 months because there was no news for vaccine, there was no news when it's going to end and what it could be. Right? At that time, pitching in for a real estate because investors will only see as real estate, although it's a hybrid model, right? Although it's an escape route from co-working, but from the real estate side, right? The commercial real estate side. But in the end, when companies and people are not going to offices, so it was a challenging bit at that time. But at the same time, we knew that how the demand would be after 6 months from here, right? So we tried convincing investors that this is the right time to invest, so that we can focus upon technology innovations and stuff, so that when the market is ready to hit and we are good to go with that technology, right? That's the risk and equity is all about, I guess. So we managed convincing that, and so yeah, we're raising a pre-series. So it's just at the closer stage. So we are almost at 90%. So it took us 6 months, like a normal cycle for a fundraise. So yeah.
What about Chinmay? Did you attempt or are you planning to raise the last 12 months or future?
We were planning to raise actually, Rajan. So what happened is we closed our seed round with a group called the Kolte Patil Family Office. It's a family office of the Kolte Patil developer. So incidentally, we closed it just prior to the lockdown in March.
Okay.
So, then the 6 months, essentially, hardly anything had moved. So there was no point in raising more funds. So only once my colleagues were able to go out towards, the July and August when things opened up a bit, and we started getting pretty decent traction. So we realized that in order to be more aggressive and to make, this year more meaningful, I think this would be a right time to again raise more funds for the Series A. So that's how we just started the process, Rajan, maybe about a week, 2 weeks back is when we started this whole process. So we're hoping to close it in another 3 months' time. I think that would be a reasonable time frame.
You don't see any challenges because of the COVID effect?
Not really. I don't think, Rajan, the initial discussions I've had, I don't think they're pretty, there's not so much of skepticism with regards to COVID and how COVID will impact the student housing. But I think the concerns which I have heard, Rajan, was something very similar to even pre-COVID, which is that, when you look at a student housing or even a co-living sector, it is generally perceived as a capex intensive business. Right. So when you talk about some of these institutional funds, I think they would need that comfort that look, you have the fundraising ability, you have the ability to continuously keep raising funds so that the previous ones can get an exit. So I think those concerns still remain. And it is slightly also unfortunate, Rajan, because while the same investors are all open to funding crores and crores into the unprofitable ventures, but when it comes to real estate, everyone talks about capex intensive. So it's a bit of irony, but I think COVID per se has not changed the investment thesis or the outlook towards it in a big way. That's what I've realized, Rajan, in a few weeks of effort.
That's great. Okay, Yogesh, you tell me what are the challenges you face if you have attempted to raise in the last 12 months?
Okay, we raised seed round pre-COVID time, and frankly, we I got hit if the pandemic didn't come to our way, we might have been multiple cities by this time. So because we because in the Feb and March, I have attended at least a second round of the round with the pre-series A for the multiple investors. I can name few. The Indian Angel Network, and then the Artha Ventures. So I was in very close discussion with them till the kind of March first week. But then the COVID happened, and all these investors kind of say that we need some time now, because no one knows how long this COVID will how long it will sustain. So now post COVID, we resumed the operations again. So now what happened, we had close to 150 companies working from our spaces. We had multiple locations across Pune, and we were about to launch Bangalore operations. So हम जितने स्पीड से ऊपर गए थे उतने स्पीड से नीचे आ गए, just like any other startups. But having said this, the future is extremely positive, extremely vibrant for us and for all these remote companies. So now what happened, we are in our very short goal target is to bring back all our existing customers in the next 2-3 months. We had 150 plus the startups working from our spaces. So our short-term target is to bring back equivalent or equal number of 100 to 100 the customer back, and then go for the pre-series A. Because the previously we done this, that might be someone can call it a luck, or maybe that happened only once. But now we just wanted to do it again and just prove ourselves that the whatever we achieved little or small success pre-COVID time, that was not luck or something. It was completely kind of a hard work and kind of a teamwork and kind of a solid business model. So maybe next 2-3 months very crucial for us. And fortunately, the momentum is already started from last 1 month. So we are in the right track, and we might go for pre-series in in the month of April then. But we
so you don't see any you foresee any challenges?
No, I don't think so any challenges, because the COVID is an advantage for us. All these companies like us, the COVID is an advantage because the COVID as I just mentioned this previous session, that what demonetization done with the digital payment wallet companies, the COVID will done with the remote work companies.
Thank you, Yogesh. Prabhat, you tell me about your last attempts or the future plans of raising fund and the challenges you foresee.
Sure.
For the kind of projects you have.
Sure. So we closed our seed round. We did about 1.3 million. We closed that sometime in November in 2019, right? 19. So the plan was, and by the way, November 19 technically meant that more or less all the work was done by July, August. The rest of it was more of a formality and paperwork. Now our plan, like some of the other speakers, was to start our pre-series A conversation in March. So everything was ready, and then the COVID hit. So it did not make any sense because the mood was different. So, and if you really look at it, what we also realized is that the biggest impact of COVID we felt was in Q2. Because what happens is, the Q1, nobody knew what was going on. Q2 is where we had the maximum hit, and we really had to focus a lot to get it back to normal. We tweaked our business models, etc. And family homes helped us a lot to survive that situation. And within 6 months, we are back to the old levels, and then now we are much ahead of that. Now, from an investment perspective, we have started our pre-series A. The good news is that we already have 500,000 committed numbers already. We're almost about to sign the term sheet, and the rest of it, conversations are on. We're giving it another 3 to 4 months. But to me, pre-series A is more like for the next 2 to 2.5 years to get to about 7x or 8x growth in terms of monthly run rate. And pre-series A, I don't see an issue at this point of time, though it's going to be talking and this, that, etc. And then after 2 years is after 1.5 years is Series A. To me, I think that is going to be the far more important thing, and we have started socializing that, because there what the difference is that it's very for angels or HNIs or smaller VCs, I think they get excited with this. The bigger ones need more unit economics. They need to see operational numbers and so on. So I think that 1 year will give us enough time to push the numbers and also get all our numbers attractive enough for them to make an investment. And Series A to us is going to be a big expansion, because in pre-Series A we are just doing an acceleration by 8x, and we are only doing Bangalore, Pune and same models. But in Series A we are adding anywhere between 4 to 8 cities, and we are taking very large buildings which we call the executive homes. So the ask for Series A is also going to be much higher. So, I mean, whatever challenges, people were talking, Chinmay mentioned, there are certain things, like student housing, co-living, etc., which comes. The only good thing in our case is that we've also expanded to family homes. So that gives us a little bit of a space to, manage some of the risk, right? I mean, if you just continue with one model and something goes wrong, it becomes very difficult. So fortunately, we have kind of bridged all that. We've also launched PMS, property management services. That is also fairly profitable and a good business for us. And it also ensures stickiness with the homeowners as well as with the developers. And one last point, which I just want to conclude with, is that we are also working on some very large JVs. So these are, for example, one JV which you're talking about is almost a 100 crore JV. But for the JV to materialize and give some numbers, it's going to be a few months at least. So there's a lot of activity that needs to be done. So we want to raise pre-Series A next 2-3 months and do whatever 7-8 things that we need to do to build our solid Series A story, and then go for the kill.
Thank you, Prabhat. So the space is becoming very hectic. There's a lot of investment things coming up. So now the next question is very crucial. I want to know, I think every one of you have your own business model. But what do you think the right PM of product market fit to build traction, revenue, raise fund during pandemic, post-pandemic? So you can start with, Spurs, you start with.
Right. Market fit product for us, what we see is the corporate product that we see, right? That's because in the end, co-working was well understood for freelancers or startups, right? But along the years, it has grown for SMEs and corporates, and now especially the entire flexible era, and that's it has to be empowered to the big organizations and to the big corporates, right? That they were sitting in. That's where the major shift would be. So for us, the market fit product is our entire corporate product ecosystem that is there, because that will give us a lot of traction in one go. That can be like one corporate deal gives us 5 crore to 10 crore ARR, right? So 10 corporate deals on the corporate product gives us 100 crore ARR. So that's the quantum of it. 100 corporates, we're talking about 1,000 crore ARR, right? So, putting a corporate aggregation product on the flex basis is the right market fit for, and at this moment, what I feel in. So, and that's what the entire focus is about. So we are building in parallelly the traction and the committed ARRs contracts on the product on that, so that we can focus upon the Series A thing faster and penetrate faster. So, yeah.
So what is the targeted time or something to build up that product?
So the product is already live. Yeah, product is already live. We are already started pilots from November. So we're now post pilot stage. So now we are signing in contracts. So we are soon, from 3 months from here, we will be at a growth stage. So and that's the good part about it, because that was the timing. So what I feel is a market fit product has a very very crucial thing with the timing thing, right? Maybe this timing is perfect of what I'm speaking right now. 1 year from here, this corporate product might not be the market fit product at that moment. The market would have evolved in that case. So we just knew that Q4 and Q1 would be the right pace for the corporate product, for the co-working aggregation, for the market fit. So we started our pilots from October, and that's what the entire fundraise story was initially. That we were developing that through the entire COVID period. Then we started our pilots, and people started coming out, corporates started coming out. Now we're growing numbers on that. so that we sign in some like committed ARRs on the basis of which we also go for a series and also penetrate faster with that market product.
Thank you, Spurs. Yogesh, you tell me what is the right PMF you are developing or already developed for building traction,
Okay,
investor response.
the simple point of view I understand like about the product market fit is with the from our customer. I learned from what is the product market fit. It's very simple for me. There are only two rules I follow. Any product, take it any random service or a product. If these two rules are applied to your product or service, you got a product or service is a market fit. Just a thumb rule I'm telling you. The first rule is the how many customers you are getting, like how many your customers are renewing the memberships month on month. That's the existing customer, the retention ratio. If the retention ratio is super high, that's the first sign. Second one, for example, in our cases, our retention ratio is like more than 90% every month on month. Okay. And the second one, all these customers are speaking about you, are telling the other customers that this product or the service is excellent. So the first one, existing customer, the retention ratio, and the second one, the word of mouth publicity. If these two things are with you, like this is the, in my opinion, this is the perfect sign that you got your product market fit. Then all these things are kind of, I can say the outputs, how much money you raise or how much the investor are behind you or after you. But these are all uncontrollable things. But if you have these two things, you got your product market fit.
That's great. Okay. So Chinmay, you tell me about the right PMF to build traction, to raise funds.
So Rajan, the student housing or the student accommodation space is slightly unique in the way that students behave. Now, all of us have been through that phases in our life. So we all know that, when it comes to the housing part, we always have a ceiling with respect to how much can we pay for a room, right? So even if you provide somebody a Taj experience, he or she is not going to pay you beyond a certain limit, right? So when we are focusing on, say, more of the tier 2, tier 3, slightly you could say base of pyramid demography, the three things that become very crucial for us to achieve a PMF. One is how can we make it more secure, or safety rather. That would be the number one. And safety, I think, is a pretty universal concern when it comes to the entire co-living, co-working, space, irrespective of which geography you are. So one is how do you ensure that your safety protocols are in place. The second is definitely, again, Rajan, the affordability. Now, I truly believe that the true impact of the lockdown and the severity of it, we are still yet to assess and fully come to terms with it. There is definitely going to be a liquidity crunch in the future. And so how affordable can we make our properties? That's going to be very crucial, especially again in that demography. And the last one is definitely security. The security, I say, Rajan, is because when we look at the tier 2, tier 3, our main competition is with some of the unorganized student accommodation players, or what we traditionally know as PGs, right? So when you look at some of those properties, I mean, the security is not even an afterthought, right? It's so pitiable condition. So I think these three things, Rajan, is something that we feel could help us achieve a PMF. And at the same time, our approach in order to drive up the occupancies and stuff has been to partner with, say, even educational institutes. So many of the properties that we take up we make it a point to take it something closer to educational institutes so that we can tie up a partner with them and have the overflow crowd come onto our property. So that Rajan, is something that we are trying. And as far as investor part is concerned, Rajan, what had happened pre-COVID is because, especially in the student housing space, there were few operators who were in a race to build inventory. And when I say inventory, it's about how many beds you have. So what happened in the process is that the way that they had valued the assets with the property owners, or the way they had done the negotiation, the deal with the property owners, the prices for that, Rajan, were very, very escalated. Right. So then the problem they ran into was when the lockdown happened and there was no cash inflows, but the outflows were continuing to happen. That is where the high value of the asset which they had paid for, that came back to haunt them.
Right. Okay, sir.
So then,
okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your time, sir. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, sorry, Rajan. There was.
No,
sorry about that. So now, Rajan, what we are looking at is in a post-COVID era, I think the investor focus is a lot about what are your EBITDA margins? Typically in our student housing, the EBITDAs were around 20-25%, but now they're coming back and saying, look, the 20-25% was because the owners were paid a very, very high rental, which they didn't, it was a very high valued. So now if you're adjusting those valuations, the owners are also on board with regards to slightly reduced, their rentals. Then we need to look at a 30-35% EBITDA. So I think the focus has changed a lot, Rajan, from an investor perspective, from inventory and number of beds to what are your EBITDA margins. Right? That I think is a very, very positive development and a good, positive sentiment that we have felt from the investor community.
But when the universities and colleges are not fully opened,
yeah.
So these are the future plans, or like how? Because it's not fully opened up yet, right? So how the occupancy challenges you are facing?
Yeah, it wasn't, Rajan, but fortunately since mid-December, you had at least had the college staff coming over. The students were not there. So it was actually a very good time to meet up with them easily and then kind of strike a deal that, hey, when your students come back, we have the property ready. So I think it gave us a good time to kind of put our hygiene factor in place and also have some of these relationships going. So I think as of today, we have partnerships with 4 large institutes. And incidentally, Rajan, a couple of them have started their enrollment as of today. So I think it gave us the last 2-3 months gave us a good time to put these things in place.
That's great, Chinmay.
Thank you.
So I think we go to Prabhat. You tell me about the right PM of.
Yeah, sure. So, see, from our perspective, we just completed 5 years this month. So I think our product has, we've already tried and it works well in the market. I think there are 2-3 things that has really helped us. One is the choice of assets. And compared to many of our competitors, we have always been particular about picking good assets. Because in this business, what we've realized, you get a good asset, everything else downstream will work well. You get a bad asset, you can be assured that you will only be struggling with assets and so on. So we picked some good assets, and our model is such that we don't lose money in properties. And third, if you look at it, we've also invested heavily on our operations. And what we realized is that this is not just about just finding a place and giving it on an app, etc. This is technology is just an enabler, but the larger thing is give them the right assets and give them a right experience, and then people will stay. So what this has done is, with owners, just to give you a sense, we have minimum 5-year agreements. So today, for example, we are sitting on an order book of almost 50 crores because we've got 4-5 years of average association with owners. And tenants, we don't operate with short terms. So all our tenants stay for 11 months. And there we have about 70% renewals. So technically speaking, what we've realized is that if we focus on utilization and some of the other stuff, it just puts us, it helps us with the business. So net, I think from a product market fit, I think things are working well. Bangalore has clicked for us. Pune has also clicked. Next 2 years, we only want to go hyper in both the cities in what we call chosen micro markets. So there are about 25 micro markets between the 2 cities that we've identified. Now, just coming from you mentioned about investment, revenue, profit, etc. I think what we feel is that, this business is not about revenue in true sense, right? Or GMV. A lot of people think it's GMV. To me, I think that's the most foolish way of looking at this business. This is more about cash, right? And companies which have struggled are the ones who have not been able to manage their cash flow, right? And so one thing which we've learned from the pandemic is that cash is king, right? Cash is, where this real sanity comes, right? And get back and look at the business from a cash lens. So cash is the most important, then comes your profit, then comes the revenue. And the minute you start to take that approach and the minute you orient your team, the game is very different, right? So the biggest learning for me is just manage cash well, everything else will happen, right? And I know, I was talking to one of my, few of our competitors, and there were people saying that they were sitting on 2-3 crores of cash outstanding, and they didn't know whether they will they will be able to recover this. And remember, in co-living particularly, there are 2-3 segments. One segment is less than 8,000 rupees, one is between 8 to 12, and one is beyond 12. Now, beyond 12, I don't think you have so many issues in terms of cash, right? 8 to 12 are generally decent, sincere people, entry level. The problem comes below 8, right? Because remember, these are people who are very price sensitive. So for them, it is okay to just leave the property and disappear. Don't pay rent for 2 months, 3 months. So if you do not have a right hook in terms of the right deposit, the right agreement, the right KYC, it can get very, very difficult. So this whole thing about managing cash, ensuring tight operations, I think to me is of paramount importance in this entire business, and we've done that. Now, as I mentioned, right, we are in this co-living and family. Family, the game is very different. Family, you don't have these challenges, right? Generally, once a family comes, they negotiate hard on the rental, etc. But once they are in, they're there for 3 years, 4 years. So that gives a lot of stability. So that's how I say at this point of time.
But there are a lot of senior citizen properties are coming up in South India.
Yeah.
But how you are going to be an aggregator or something for that? Or
No. So
you'll be developing your own.
No. So see, what we have done is we started with co-living, and went to family. We're doing these two. See, senior homes is at this point of time, the senior home business will start once we get an anchor customer. Now, without revealing too much of details, there is somebody who runs a 100-bed senior homes in Bangalore, and this gentleman who runs it, we have some very good relationship because we manage a lot of his property. He wants to do a JV with us where we will operate it for him. So the way he will do it is he will break this entire thing into two parts. One is going to be rental property management, and the other one is going to be, what you call the healthcare service management. Now he's got a team of doctors and etc., which will do the second part. Our scope is only going to be rental property management marketing. So to me, this is something which we would like to experiment, because see, we want to think a little bit out of the box also, because we know co-living, we know family. We feel that senior homes, special homes for special kids. I mean, these are things which can be a game changer. So we're putting a lot of our ideas and thoughts. If all goes well, maybe in the next 3 to 6 months we may have something to announce. But I'm just keeping my fingers crossed on that. That can be like beyond whatever we are doing. So
Great, Prabhat. I think we have 2 more panelists joined us, so I'm just trying to get them online. Just hold on. I will just refresh. I think they will become. They are. I'm not able to see them. Light on, sir.
Hi Rajan, can you see me?
भाई के भेज दो. You can see them. Vandana, Tushar, both are here.
Yeah. Hello, Rajan sir.
Hi Rajan.
So yeah. Before that, I couldn't see them. Now I could see both of you. So Vandana and Tushar, both are investment advisors. So I want to get their opinion, the investment perspective in this segment. So I'll put a question. How do you view the market opportunities shaping up for co-working and co-living? Tushar.
Sir, the market opportunity is improving. From an investment perspective, there was a complete no-no with the investors to any asset-oriented business models. But they have started with people having started to come back to co-working spaces. So there has been a renewed interest, especially from an investor perspective. But having said that, there are a lot of challenges. What has worked is that with the advent of geo and lowering of data prices by 90-95%, people are more used to using technology, and because of inherent challenges like distractions at home, unavailability of right infrastructure like printer, desk space. Indian homes are not so sophisticated, and high speed internet, and some people have faced the problem that there is a lack of social interactions and peer to peer engagements, and because of that there is a loss of in productivity being at home. So all these factors have added to the pickup of co-working spaces by customers, and although there has been a shift in the sense that this has prompted more and more companies to explore work near home, so allowing employees to work remotely out of shared spaces while having access to effective office infrastructure. So this is there is a shift in business models as well, and there is a shift in customer behavior and customer culture, cultural factors as well, which is leading to renewed interest of investors in this space.
Thank you, Shudha. Tushar Kansal is the CEO, founder of Consultancy Ventures. He is into investment management plus venture capital. Now I put a question to Vandana. Vandana is the founder, CEO, Convantos. He is also an investment advisor, venture capital. Vandana, you could hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
The question is, how do you view the market opportunities shaping up for co-living, co-working?
Rajan, I'll tell you, before COVID, this was a very hot sector and investors were looking to invest in this sector deeply. What happened was that, few generations before, the people were not educated enough about startups. Many people were afraid to take entrepreneurship because of the risk of failure. Now what has happened is that people are adapting to more and more entrepreneurship skills, which means that they would need such places like co-working and co-living. I'm in favor of co-working because it is one of the, it gives us the flexibility to work as an entrepreneur and in an environment which is a professional environment. Work from home normally doesn't happen really well in most cases when we have children at home and, we have the doorbells ringing and we have other things to attend as well. So this kind of professional environment really helps us. Now it is coming back. So I wouldn't say it is a hot sector in investments, but investments are happening in this space. And I see that a lot more co-working investments will happen. But of course, keeping the competition in mind is, I would always look up at WeWork. So if you look at WeWork, they have enough women's safety oriented cabins there. Not only that, they also provide lunch and dinner and snacks, which makes it very easy for any entrepreneur to work. So these kind of things should be added on to co-works, which I see is not there. Typically aggregators, I had a bad experience with one of the aggregators, MYHQ. So, aggregators also need to build up their, look at their competition and be more, customer oriented than just, looking at what they are getting in terms of cash or returns. So I don't think aggregators work well in this space, but definitely co-working is coming up. Co-living is more for single people. It is not meant for families. It is more for university kids. So I don't see that coming up or getting investments very fast in that space.
But Prabhat is doing very well for family. He's catering to families. Family co-living.
So again, I don't know. I mean, here in this big cities and all, it's a bit of challenge with families to have such kind of environment.
No, because organized rental business is going to pick up definitely when the real estate industry is becoming more professionalized. So definitely there is space for growth, family, co-live families, and even senior citizens, provided we take care of all their services A to Z. Then everything evolves.
I think for senior citizens, it makes sense because they need a lot of services, including food and lot of care, etc. And also single people, I think they would adapt this to more. But I think for couples with small kids and families where they have like grandfather, grandmother, and too many people in the family, then I think it's not best suited.
Okay. Thank you, Vandana. Thank you, Vandana. You just also introduce about yourself because you're not done before saying.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, I'm Vanna Tolani. I have worked in Singapore and Jakarta for 15 years in investment banking. I had my own family office fund there, and this is my 6th year back in India. I did some investments, went back to advisory. I'm connected globally with 200 investors. And I also pick up global deals. So I'm a global entity. We are sector agnostic. We look into invest $1 million to $25 million. So please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you, Rajan, for having me here.
Thank you. Now, Tushar, another question for you.
Right, sir.
What do you see the benchmark of investment if you're investing in co-working or co-living? What is the ideal benchmark?
So the benchmark
post-pandemic. Yeah.
Post-pandemic. So you have to recognize the fact what is the requirement of the customer. So if the customer is requiring social distancing norms to be met, more open spaces and less dense spaces, you have to provide that. If the customer is requiring offices, co-working offices near the place where their employees reside, be it tier 2 or tier 3 cities, it's an opportunity instead of a problem. And if there is instead of individuals, if there is a rise in usage of co-working spaces by B2B and enterprise clients, that's again a welcome for these companies. There has to be new business models. Companies are more concerned where their employees are staying and coming from. And I remember Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. He said that he would want to reduce salaries because people are no longer paying the high salaries at Silicon Valley and Bay Area. And, so I don't concur with those views. If there is more efficiency in the system because of a digital transformation, then the benefits of that should be passed on to the employees. Look at General Electric. It has since ages, it has said that employees should not come to offices because they treat office as a cost, and that's how things have forcefully moved because of COVID. And I feel that that there will be rise in acquisitions because the big players, they would want to have many locations under their umbrella. So that is again, it's again a big opportunity for any small player to be having a boutique business and doing well and getting acquired at a good valuation. Just like Google and Facebook, they eat up hundreds of tech companies every year. So I feel also on the, there are many employees who were working out of a guest house, some beautiful location. So, this throws up very interesting opportunities for hotels and hospitality chains to have dedicated co-working office spaces with good facilities at very cheap locations like Himalayas, some city, or close to the river with a Wi-Fi connection. And so, the investor per se will look at models which are more coherent with the changing customer requirement. And I would welcome all the co-working, co-living, flexi spaces companies. We are very close to. I have personal relationships since the last 6 years with almost 350 investors, including from APAC, Middle East, US, UK, and India. So, we're happy to assist in fundraise. I also have a angel network fund called Saffron First, where there are 38 HNIs, and we would be happy to assist all such companies raise equity capital.
Thank you, Tushar. Vandana, one question for you. What is your way of looking at, what is the benchmark of, raising fund? Like traction or right PM or they must have a sustainable, they should have survived the last 12 months, then they can survive in the next 1 year. So what are the benchmarks you look at? Or you advise certain investors to put in the money?
I always advise founders that, they must have a very good pitch deck and a very good story when they are pitching to investors. Many promoters don't want to invest in a pitch deck because they feel that it is of no use. But I think if they get their pitch deck done, professionally made, it will really help them get their investments. One is that. Second is in their team, they must have a CFO, CTO, because they need to manage their finances well. And that's these kind of virtual CFOs and CTOs would help them with proper guidance. The right kind of team is really, really important to have in a system which many promoters are apprehensive to have. And to have the right kind of, proper management, many co-workings don't have proper management in terms of safety, etc. So I think they need to look into that as well. Traction is, of course, important, and the background of the founder is really, really important when an investor looks into investing. So these are some of the basic things one needs to look at.
Thank you, Vandana.
Yeah.
So we have come to the concluding notes. To summarize the session, I want to ask you one final question to all of you. To start with, Spurs, what do you foresee the emerging fundraising challenges? Right now, you don't foresee. Maybe if the pandemic still survives, or you'll find difficulty. Maybe some challenges can crop up if you foresee in the next 1 year. Any challenges you foresee?
Yeah,
or
so
you have absolutely no problem.
No, there are always challenges in fundraise, because we have been facing them a lot, and I think we have learned that slowly and slowly that what could be like Vandana was telling, and like the right pitch deck or the right kind of documents in place, like the right data room in place, the right traction in place, or maybe the right advisors in place, the right management team in place. So I think there are a lot of challenges in fundraise. It looks very easy because it's not that easy, and anywhere I cannot mark that statement, be at any stage. If we have raised Series A, Series B has a lot of challenge. If we have raised Series B, Series C has a lot of challenge, because as we keep going up, there are a lot different challenges as per the new dynamics of the bigger round. So we figured out a lot of challenges for pre-series, and we managed to close it up. All that's left up for 20%, but Series A, now we know that we have a long list of challenges in front of us, right? That would be, if though we have 2,000 employees using our B2B product for co-working aggregation by April or by May, I think that will not be enough. So we are formulating on committed ARRs, right? So if you want to raise 25 crore of fund, right, we do not have that level of revenue. So maybe we could have a committed ARR right? Like I was mentioning it. So that's one of the challenges. How do we get to that equation? So that is a challenge. Apart from that, there are very minute challenges that keeps coming in the life cycle of a startup, right? Right now the team is in symphony. Everything is going good. It's going good. Maybe in April or May, uh, a couple of management people drops by, right? And there is a drag and there is a lag up there, and certain revenues are not hitting by, or certain things are not coming by. So yeah, we are ready for the challenges. They could be miscellaneous challenges, and they could be round specific challenges where the round it is. But I think perseverance is important. So we as entrepreneurs are preparing ourselves to keep going in and keep learning in, and never believe that we know everything, right? And it's okay that we'll raise it, and that will take a lot of time. Yeah.
So, Rajan, if you could allow me, if I could connect with Sparsh on this for a few minutes. Sparsh, you need to also have the right kind of advisors, and you should pick up the right kind of investment bankers when you look at such thing, because these people are apprehensive about that as well.
Right.
Investments is all about relationships. Also, so the investment bankers have the right kind of relationships with the funds, and they would know the right steps to help you execute. If in case you have it's very important to have a CFO, CTO, like I said, and some good advisors on board with you that will help you pull through. So, I know it's a challenge, but don't give up. Perseverance is the key to everything.
Right. Thank you so much, Vandana. I think we are learning through it. We are onboarding advisors and investment consultants from India and across the globe, so that we could have a good funnel for Series A to go up.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you, Sparsh. One request, when others are speaking, if you could lower the speaker sound, it'd be good, because there are disturbances coming. So next we go to Chinmay. You tell me.
Yeah, Rajan, I think one of the key things that's happening is, if you look at the exits, in the last year in the startup ecosystem, I don't think we have had many exits, right? And considering that money, the VC funds, is a zero-sum game, there is going to be a crunch. So I think more and more term sheets are going to be tranche-based. It's going to be deliverable-based. It's not going to be a blank check of 10 million straight away. I think that's going to be based on hitting your EBITDA margins and your committed ARRs. So I think that's one of the things that's definitely going to change, Rajan. And also what I feel is that, given that there is going to be a crunch, I believe that whatever we had projected pre-pandemic with regards to our Series A fundraise, I think we should look at raising maybe 2.5 times of that. Simply because, Rajan, I believe that it's good to have the elephant in your own backyard than somebody else's, and go back to the market every 6 months. So given the crunch that's in play, definitely coming through, I think tranche-based and raising a larger round would make more sense from an entrepreneur perspective. So I think that's going to definitely come in, Rajan.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Yogesh, you are there, or Yogesh?
Yes,
you tell me your point of view. The unforeseen challenges of fundraising.
Okay, so what happened actually? There are two sides. One is the positive side, as already I discussed. Okay, the only the challenging side I can see is the good side. Like, the picture is very clear after the COVID has cleared the picture, which work model or kind of models are going to work and which will not going to work. For in our case, I'm sure Prabhat will also agree with me on this, because what happened actually, we are kind of on a rented model earlier. Okay, so due to COVID, we shift ourselves into the revenue share model. So we are completely asset-led model, and we, in the longer run, we're going thanks to the COVID, because COVID forces us to change our business model fundamentally. Not the only difference between, earlier we are giving a kind of a fixed rent to the owners, and now recently, post COVID, we completely shift on revenue share model. Because of my understanding, I heard lots of time Ritesh Agrawal in between in the COVID time, lockdown time. So clearly they are in very good condition in the China because they have lots of property on the revenue share model, and they are significantly like on a loss side in the India, because Indian market, they are kind of a full stack properties are more in India compared to China. So that's how we shifted to this model, and we realized that it will helpful us to scale the business. Okay, and also like the only challenge we see in the scales is the upcoming some of the big companies which can be a kind of a, like, for example, if the only challenge we can see in the longer run, if for example, the company like Zomato maybe, okay, because they have thousands and lakhs of restaurants across India and other countries, if they come into the picture and they wanted to operate as a co-working space, then what is the scenario? First is. Second, whenever I speak with my team or the investors or the other guys, other customers, so the basic vision we have very clear. We are working towards making co-working spaces free. We don't want it to charge people for co-working spaces. So our vision or kind of a purpose to run this FRI is to make co-working spaces free. So the challenge is to find, the bigger challenge is to find the investor who can trust on this kind of a vision. Okay, whenever I talk like we wanted to make co-working spaces free, so I can see people are laughing. Okay, many of like even including the investors, because these guys cannot get that kind of the point why we wanted to make co-working spaces free. So to find out like an ideal investor is a very big challenge.
There is a disconnect. We require strong internet connectivity in India. That is still suffering. On?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
There was a disturbance. Tell me. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yeah, good hear.
Yeah, so that's the last point I just made, that it's very tough to find the ideal investor, maybe who can believe in your vision. It's not about only the traction or what is your the profit or the how many multiple cities you are. These are important, though not. This is super important, but we also the finding out the right mindset of an investor is very tough. Even the post-COVID, it got even tougher.
Got you, Yogesh. Thank you. Prabhat?
Yes, thank you, Rajan.
Yeah.
You are focus. You are into focusing on real estate.
No, so basically, what do you call
unforeseen challenges? You only just point out unforeseen challenge.
Well, I really think I only see one big challenge, which is growth for us. I think that's where we need to just stay very focused. We probably laser focus on that. And growth is going to be both organic as well as some very large JVs and partnerships, right? Now, remember, organic is much easier. It will happen because it's already going through a certain path. The JVs, etc. Sometimes there can be all these spanners. There can be last-minute changes here, there, etc. So I think those are the things. And I think if we are able to achieve some good numbers, I don't think there should be an issue raising investment, because we are already on that path. I mean, we very soon we're talking about 50 crores of order booking. We're talking about 100 crores of pipe, right? So very soon we'll start hitting big numbers. So we just have to continue doing that, and that's the tough part of the entire business, driving profitable growth. So I think we just have to continue with that.
Thank you, Prabhat. So I think our thoughts towards the market is sustainability. I mean, we always think sustainable, and we look forward growth. So I conclude the session with co-working and co-living. Both are here to stay.
Absolutely, Rajan.
And both can attract a lot of investments even from the real estate sector, from venture capital funds, even from angel investors, depending on the business models we have. Traction plays an important, but sustainability over the years also very important. And growth projections are always, we can always make. So thanks all of you for taking your time, come here and sharing your insights, which is very interesting. And look forward
Thank you.
again for the next event. Thanks Prabhat, thanks Chinmay, Tushar, Vandana.
Thank you, Rajan, sir. Thank you so much.
Look forward meeting you all again.
Bye bye.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan,
Bye.
for organizing this meet. Thank you so much.
Bye, bye.
Yeah, bye bye.
Thank you all of you.
चाय